right, Clean Freaks, we are back in studio for episode 11, Kurt, of your Rigid Endoscope Expert series here on Beyond Clean. Uh, 11 ain't 12, so that means that we've got two more here in the kitty for our audience today. But I want to welcome you back for this inspection, part one of a two-part inspection series here, little mini series within a series. And as I alluded to on the last episode, this is one of my favorite topics. I love inspection. It's so fun. You kind of get to use your left and right side of your brain, uh, all kind of coming together to say, hey, we want this device to work because it can be sterile. Everything we've been talking about, clean, sterile. But if it ain't working, it ain't checking the box for the physician or for the patient, obviously. So, Kurt, where do you want to start
Yeah,
today
I'm
on
excited about this
inspection?
one too. I love this. So we'll start with the visual. Couple ways to look at this. We're talking about rigid endoscopes here, rigid telescopes. We already spoke about glass. So what we're going to talk about is just rigid telescopes that have optical glass, not cameras. That's a different conversation. So when we talk about inspection of a rigid endoscope, there are two things I like to consider. One would be the optical quality, and then two would be the mechanical functioning. However, is it intact? Is there any external damage? So one thing that I see a lot of folks do, and we'll get to how you inspect and things like that in episode 12, to your point. But a couple of things I want you to consider. So video on its own, we have color and we have light. That's it. Those are the basic elements. So from there, most of us can see color. Not all, but most of us. Not all of us can see color the same way. So that's why this inspection I'm about to show you, I think, makes sense for even folks who say, I can't do an inspection on a rigid endoscope because I'm colorblind. It wouldn't apply in this situation. When we are trying to assess the optics of a rigid endoscope, all we are trying to determine is the amount of light transmission that's actually being relayed through that endoscope. And if you've paid attention with us for the previous 11, you've learned about illumination fibers, you've learned about rod lens fibers and all those different things. And the same could apply there as well. We are looking at light transmission. So I've got two visuals here. One is showing in video, we use primary colors, red, green, and blue. And from there, we develop all the other colors of the spectrum. For those of you who took our class, you've heard yellow, magenta, and cyan are the primary colors, but that's for printing and drawing. For video, it's red, green, and blue. From there, we have light, which is contrast. So when you look at this, and when we buy TVs, they talk about contrast levels. When you have a very good contrast level, meaning you have a specific number of gray scaled items, this develops your contrast level, which then becomes a three-dimensional image. And we'll get to that later on when we do an inspection. But again, we are focused on black and white images, nothing to do with color. Okay.
So, Kurt, this kind of basic question, right? Why is color important in surgery? Like, why do we
Accuracy.
want?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Accuracy. I mean,
Okay.
now we're talking about multi-fluorescent technology, which is a whole nother conversation. So if you watch crime scene investigation shows and something's on the floor or the wall and we can't see it with white light, they'll use something called luminol in that scenario, where they'll actually spray a chemistry and then they have special light source, special sunglasses to differentiate between the color spectrum. And then it fluoresces. So that's one way to take color out of the equation. Again, now we're just looking for something that fluoresces in a specific color range. But again, back to your question, it's about accuracy. When we look at tissue, we hope that our cameras, the camera I'm using right now, actually makes me look better than I am. But but we want it to be accurate. So I'm a little bit more redder probably than I
Now
normally
you got
would
a
be.
filter on. You know, one of those little filters, Kurt. It's like
Of
the 10 year
course.
younger filter.
Oh, of course I do. But so those are the questions we have. So accuracy. But my point is, if we can validate or verify that the light is being transmitted correctly, that be it through a black and white image, then the color is going to be represented well.
And so, one more question here on the light, that we can go into some of these devices that help us on the inspection side. But um, I thought I heard you say that it's the light contrast that assist in providing that 3D type image, or at least the depth image. Uh, I That's kind of new to me. Can you explain anything else about that, or how that functions for me?
Sure can. I think as younger adults, we all took some type of class where we learned to draw with a pencil. And when we drew with a pencil, we created depth of an image by shading with a pencil. So the darker areas will be in the background. The lighter areas would actually be in the foreground. So that's how we develop that level of depth in a video image. Now, I'm right now at this point, we're talking about a telescope that I'm looking through by eye. I am not bringing into video cameras and video systems and monitors and how they introduce an entirely new dynamic. But what we're talking about today is just an inspection of a telescope with the naked eye and how it shows a black and white image. Because a lot of times I'll see folks use test patterns with colors. And then you're you should be calibrating those test patterns. That's a whole nother conversation. But that's why black and white in light transmission is one of the ways we measure how well it's performing.
It's fascinating. Okay. So we got this foundational, color and light. What's next here?
So there are a lot of different tools out there today. When we talk about eye loops, and I know folks have been using these for many years. So eye loops are intended to look at the condition either of the distal tip. So what does the surface of the lenses look like? Or there are in some situations, and we'll get to this during inspection, where you can take an eye loop and you can attach it or connect it to a telescope and you can increase or decrease the distance. And now what you're changing is the actual focal point when you're looking at a telescope. So if I have a telescope shaft that's this long, and I take an eye loop and I move it away, that means I'm now looking at the lenses not at the distal tip, but somewhere in the intermediate section. So the reason I'm showing what's called a rigid scan tool is this tool does that. So you place your telescope in this scanner. You can either look at it by eye, so it has a built-in eye loop, but you're looking at it through here, or you can attach a camera to it and then project it onto a monitor. And simply by increasing or decreasing the distance, you're then either looking at the lenses here, here, or here. So if you want to identify exactly where the damage is in the telescope, that's one way of doing it. And from there, then you go into the more expensive options that are being I introduced now as we speak, where it's an automated inspection bench. And some of those benches, I would caution the users of these benches. I think they're great, by the way, but I would caution those who use these benches where you are using your scopes in your current inventory as the baseline for quality. So what I'm saying is if these scopes aren't brand new, you might be normalizing your performance on scopes that you may have had for 3, 4 years. So it's in your best interest to pick the scopes that are brand new out of the box and develop your criteria for what good is. So that's something you really need to consider when you're looking at these automated inspection benches, because that's, for the most part, that's what I've seen. Maybe some are doing it differently. So I don't want to talk negatively about those folks.
I think that's a terrific piece here, and we're not going to have time on this series, unfortunately, to go into the data of inspection. But you bring up a whole other category of, well, we're doing this work on device by device basis to make sure that these devices are patient ready, but obviously there's a lot of trending data that can come out of the care and handling gaps, the inspection gaps, even going back a couple of episodes, the sterilization modalities that we're using. If we're doing proper inspection on these tools, it can surface some interesting impacts of our choices. And so, yeah, those baselines are really important, but then it's the back end data capture is huge as well. So, Kurt, I'm going to stop you here, even though I could go another hour because I want to hear what you got to say. But we're going to make people wait one more episode to get into, okay, this is the tool set. Now, how do we apply this tool set and what are we going to see on this inspection stage? And you're going to be able to really give that nuanced perspective as we wrap this 12-part series on rigid endoscopes or rigid telescopes here in 2024, 2025 on Beyond Clean. So, Kurt, um, we're going to put your contact information in the write up of each one of these episodes just in case anyone has questions to date. And we want to encourage everyone to track you down on LinkedIn, follow Kurt, and if you've got questions that he hasn't covered, that's why he's here uh, to share that knowledge, to give that education, to connect and collaborate with people out here in the industry that are pushing this particular topic forward in the way that we want it to go to increase patient safety. So, really appreciate your time so far, Kurt, and we'll talk to you here again next month. All right. And until we do, I want to encourage everyone, just like we do each and every day here on Beyond Clean, keep fighting